All right, good morning YouTube. This is Nick with NK Landscaping yet again. Today I got a little bit of a different video for you. So time and time again, I get a countless number of comments down below asking about this thing. This is a Yardmax YD8203. They consider it a power track barrow. It's basically a track-driven wheelbarrow on steroids. And I'm going to try to answer some questions for you today about this thing. So this unit was purchased in August of 2018. We had a very special job going on that required the use of something like this. And I have prior experience with this type of machine. So my family lives on a small lake and everything there is super steep, very low accessibility for vehicles. It's even hard to walk down sometimes as a human. And our neighbor down at the lake has a Honda version of this. I'm not sure the model. I will throw some pictures throughout this video of various things I've done with this and his machine. So he let us borrow his, and after using it for a little while, we figured we couldn't go without one. We couldn't buy the Honda version in the United States, so we settled on the next best thing at the time. At the time of purchase, I believe we paid just over $2,000 for this. They're currently on sale at Home Depot and things for like $2,300, so they still are available. And let's get into how I feel about it so far. So coming around to the rear of this machine, this is kind of the business end of things. We have a 3-speed forward and 1 single-speed reverse transmission. I get a lot of questions from people asking if this transmission has kind of held up. I'd say yeah. It's very clunky and notchy. And so this is the drive lever. This controls your go, and each one of these brakes controls which side you're going to stop. So if you're going forward and you pull on this one, you're going to turn left, and if you pull on this one, you're going to turn right. To shift gears with this, sometimes what we find is you got to kind of bump the forward backward clutch lever to be able to shift into gear. Otherwise, the transmission has held up very good. I like to be a little more gentle when I run this machine, but we have had almost every one of our employees run this, and no matter how many times I tell them, they think, you know, you got to bump the clutch to get it in gear means hold this thing down and slam it into gear, whether it's loaded or not. And it's taken years of that abuse, and it still works just fine. We did have a gear oil leak from the transmission that we solved. It was actually just overfilled. I don't know how that happened, but maybe water got in there or something, so I changed the fluid. It's been good ever since. And the only other thing in the transmission area that's gone wrong has been in the belt drive. There is a tensioner pulley. The bearings went out in that, so we replaced that. Let's talk about issues up top though. This clutch lever, you may notice this shiny aluminum piece here that is not factory. The factory drive lever is mounted on a pot metal aluminum bracket that also bolts this brake lever on. So what would happen is this would get bent forward, whether someone's bumping into it or it gets hit with something, and it would crack that aluminum pot metal. So we replaced that once with the factory one. Yardmax part support is actually pretty good. I've been happy with that. We lost a cable and this lever. They sent us out a new one under warranty. It just wasn't a great design. They used this lever action type deal, and it kind of binds up, doesn't work very well. You have to put a lot more force into it than you want to. So I milled this out of aluminum, and it works great. I understand most people aren't going to be able to do that. You can modify the original piece to work much better. That's why I welded all this up here. So that's not factory. And if you do buy one of these, just be careful with that. That pot metal is not very strong. All right, so I'm going handheld for this part. Down here is another thing that ends up going bad over time. This little catch for the dump bed, it's not very strong. It was just originally just welded onto this main frame section. I have since reinforced this with rebar, and that has made that a lot more strong. I don't know if that's going to happen to a factory machine, because as you can see, ours has side extensions built on. So these are plywood sides with a floor. It's bolted in with one single bolt. and a wing nut on the bottom. So if you do need to take this off, it's very easy to do, and we do take it off pretty regularly. When this thing is full, it's quite heavy, and when you're going down hills, it's really tweaking on that little bracket. So if you're using this as it is intended to be used, you're probably going to be fine. If you're overloading it, that's a different story. As far as taking the abuse, this machine has done a great job of that. You'll see a big bend here. Kurt recently rolled this thing down an embankment, fully loaded, full of dirt. It landed on its, basically upside down. This handlebar area is very sturdy, and it provides a really good roll cage for the motor itself. That was what caused the breakage of the last handle there. So very sturdy. So let's talk about specifications for this thing. I had mentioned we have these plywood sides, and that basically double to triples our capacity. The reason we bought this machine in this configuration, Yardmax makes a number of different variants of this model. They make a hopper style one. This is considered the flatbed style, and then they actually have a larger one that has a hydraulic dump with the hopper. We opted for the flatbed style because, like I said, if you take this plywood extension off, each one of these side panels and front panel come off, and you can make this thing a flatbed. And at the time when we purchased this, we were doing a lot of very, very strange things with this machine. I'm going to drop some pictures below, but we were actually working out on an island on my parents' lake there. So our business at that time was very strange. They were doing some work on the dam of the lake. They drew the lake down to build the dam, so we had a low water situation. We found ourselves in possession of a barge, and we started doing dock constructions. This was very crucial to our business at the time, and even to this day, we use this on almost every job. We needed to be able to carry pallets, we needed to carry lumber, plywood, concrete, anything really on this, and we needed the full width. We needed to carry 8, 12, 16-foot boards, so we take the sides off and use this as a flatbed. And as far as load capacity goes, I believe this machine is rated from the factory at 660 pounds, and I'm here to tell you that it can take well above that. Things you got to watch out for. If you notice, the tracks don't come to the front of the hopper. So when you're going downhill, it's generally best to go backwards, because I'll show you, if I stand on the front here, this thing will tip. And when you get 600 or more pounds in here, this thing will pop a wheelie, and you're going to end up dumping most of your load and maybe even hurting yourself. A way you can get around that, of course, I wouldn't say to ever do this, but you can ride the back of this thing to provide a bit of counterweight, but going down backwards is probably your best bet. I'd say at times we have probably put 2,000 pounds or more in this machine, and the little Briggs & Stratton motor plus the low gear ratio of this handles it really well. When you get into those higher weight areas, pushing this thing well past its limits, you're gonna notice the front idlers are on springs, so they can be adjusted and tension the tracks properly. In forward, it's not such a big deal. In reverse, or when you're trying to turn, is when overloading can become a problem. When you pull on that brake, it compresses that spring, and it causes the drive wheels to kind of skip. So especially in reverse, trying to turn very loaded, you're gonna have trouble. It's just gonna sit there and skip in the tracks. So you do have to kind of plan how you want to make turns while you're going down a hill or trying to turn with a heavy load. So let's talk about maneuverability and mobility. Ours doesn't run so great. It's had a lot of abuse, and it really needs a carburetor tune-up. But the whole reason we bought this was the mobility. So I'm going to go in second gear. That's the speed in second gear at a mid-idle. We'll shift down into first, and you can pop a wheelie with this thing, and they will do just about anything. These things climb stairs. They will go over rocks, roots. And what's nice about having a tracked vehicle is the ground pressure. This does nearly zero damage as long as you're not twisting. Does nearly zero damage to lawn areas. You can drive it over pool patios, regular patios. We've driven it, like I said, up and down stairs to get this thing into places where you probably shouldn't have a machine of this size with that kind of weight. The low ground pressure is really easy on surfaces, so you don't have to worry about destroying things. And you can, if you need to, drive this thing up some ridiculous things to get it where you need to go with it. That's very handy if you live in a hilly area or an area that's inaccessible by a regular machine or an excavator or whatever. This is going to help you out. So another part of that maneuverability aspect is being able to get this thing loaded to get it moved to job sites. So we of course move this a number of different ways, whether it be a truck, trailer, or even in this case the mule, and being able to quickly and easily move this thing around that's extremely handy. Normally I'll do that with a ramp, but I already had the stump here, so why not? But we put this thing in the back of the pickup truck all the time. We put it in our trailer. Because this thing is so small and it only weighs about 380 pounds dry, it's pretty maneuverable. You can mobile. You can just take a set of ramps for your tractor or whatever if you have a trailer, drive this thing right up in there, and it really honestly does not take up much more room than a standard wheelbarrow. And that's pretty nice. So now you may ask the big question, would you buy one again? I think so. We've actually been talking about maybe getting a bigger one. My real goal would be to get an electric one. How cool would that be? A lot of the times when we're using this thing, it's in really tight environments and there's no other piece of equipment that can get it done except for a wheelbarrow. And if you've ever loaded a wheelbarrow full of stone or concrete or pavers and tried to go up even a slight hill and then add the fact that the grass or whatever you're going up is wet, you know that that can be just terrible. And for us, this makes a whole lot of sense. This thing has been extremely reliable. Now, like I said, if you're using and abusing this thing like we do, you better be a little DIY or be ready to keep ordering replacement parts for the common brake areas. Tracks on this thing have not been a problem at all. We threw one track in the 6 years of owning this, and these are the original tracks. They look like they have zero wear. Like I said, it's so light ground pressure that it really doesn't put a lot of wear and tear on the tracks. But yeah, I would buy another one. Comparing this to the Honda machine that I used back in the day, it's nowhere near the quality. And don't get me wrong, I understand for the price point, and this is a Chinese-made machine. You're not going to get that quality of the Honda. The Honda has a bigger bed, it's easier to dump, transmission and the motor are just better, the controls are smoother. It was just an all-around better machine, but at the end of the day, here we are 6 years later. This thing, aside from running a little weird, which is just, it sits sometimes and fuel gums up, that could be easily addressed. But aside from engine issues that are mostly my fault, this thing has been great. It's never let us down. Little things here and there have broken, but overall it's been extremely reliable. And I don't really think you should have to go out and spend 5, 10, 15. Some of these things, if you really dig into a power Trackbarrow, you can spend quite a lot of money. You know, the machines that you ride on, there's ones with hydrostatic drive, and those all might be nice features, but at the end of the day, if it gets your job done, especially this one being as cheap as it is, I would 100% recommend this. I've talked to a couple people through YouTube, through a couple different Facebook groups, and I've convinced them that this is great, depending on what you do with it. For us, with the steel wrist, I can load this thing on somebody's lawn and not spill a single drop of stone. We use this a lot in our French drain installations. This thing is just about 2 to 3 feet wide, and we dig a 2 to 3 foot wide trench when we do our French drains. So when it's time to backfill them with rock, I can scoop rock right into this. Kurt or whoever's working with us can dump this in the trench, and you make no lawn damage after you've dug your trench. It's just a good tool. And it's moved its fair share of weight, so I would recommend it. Aside from that, that's about it. I'm gonna, if you want to stick around, I'm gonna post a bunch of pictures, maybe some clips of us using this thing throughout the years. It's been all over the place with us. It's done every type of job you can imagine that we've done, and it's excelled at nearly all of them. I don't think it's ever really let us down. So if you want to stick around for that, that'd be great. If not, I'll see you on the next video, but here's some cool stuff showing this thing off.